It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago. The city was bustling with its usual rhythm, horns honking, suits rushing across zebra crossings, and the aroma of roasted coffee beans wafting through the air from nearby cafes. In the midst of that relentless hustle stood a little boy no older than 10, shirt 2 sizes too big, shoes barely holding together, and eyes far too tired for someone his age. His name was Miguel. He wasn't begging. He never did. Instead, he clutched a tattered shoeshine box, wooden, chipped, and worn, and he scanned the sidewalk with quiet desperation. He was looking for a chance, not pity. On the 22nd floor of the towering glass building across the street, Jonathan Blake, a self-made billionaire CEO, was preparing for yet another meeting. Polished, proud, and powerful, he'd built an empire from nothing and taken pride in never looking back. His assistant buzzed in. "Cars ready, sir. The press is all ready at the venue." With a nod, Jonathan adjusted his gold cufflinks and walked to the elevator, not knowing that today, fate would confront him in the form of a small boy with dusty hands and a heart bigger than most men. Outside, Miguel spotted the sleek black Bentley and the man in a navy blue suit approaching it. He sprinted forward, almost stumbling over his own feet, and planted himself firmly in the man's path. "Sir, please, let me shine your shoes. Just $10. Please. I'll do it right, fast. I need it for my mom." Jonathan halted, mildly annoyed. "Kid, I'm late." He tried to step around. But Miguel stood firm. "Please, sir. Just a few minutes. I swear I'll make him look like new. My mom's in the hospital and I need to get her medicine." For a second, Jonathan hesitated. The bodyguard moved in, but Jonathan raised his hand. Something in the boy's voice cracked through his icy professionalism. He looked down at his designer loafers and sighed. "Fine. 5 minutes. No more." Miguel dropped to his knees and began his work, his small hands moving with expert precision. Not a word more. Just focus. Jonathan watched him, arms crossed, heart unmoved, until Miguel looked up and asked, "Sir, do you think if I work hard enough, I can become someone like you?" Jonathan chuckled under his breath. "You, kid, I worked for 20 years non-stop. No vacations, no fun. Built this from the ground up. So maybe, if you get lucky." Miguel nodded, not disheartened. "Then I'll work harder than you did." Jonathan smirked, but before he could reply, a woman's scream echoed from across the street. Miguel instantly dropped his brush and ran. The CEO barely registered what was happening. The crowd gathered fast, phones in hand, whispers spreading like wildfire. Jonathan crossed the street, annoyed and confused, only to find Miguel kneeling beside a frail woman on the sidewalk, unconscious. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. "Mama, please wake up," Miguel sobbed, shaking her gently. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Miguel held her hand as they lifted her into the ambulance. The last thing she whispered before they closed the doors was, "My brave boy, always trying." Jonathan watched it all, stunned. He asked around. The woman had collapsed due to untreated pneumonia. She hadn't been able to afford her medication. Miguel had been running around shining shoes to save her. And it wasn't the first time. Suddenly, the CEO who'd built empires felt small. But what came next would break even the coldest heart. Jonathan Blake stood frozen as the ambulance's doors slammed shut. Sirens blared and the paramedics sped off, leaving behind only the scattered whispers of the bystanders and the fading echo of a boy's cry. Miguel hadn't even looked back at the CEO whose shoes he was shining just moments ago. And Jonathan, he couldn't look away. The rest of that day passed in a blur. The press event was cancelled. Meetings were rescheduled. But Jonathan's mind was stuck on one thing. Those 5 words, "I need it for my mom." That night, alone in his high-rise penthouse, he stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, city lights twinkling beneath him, his wine untouched. On his table lay Miguel's small shoeshine brush. He'd dropped it when he ran. Jonathan had picked it up instinctively, but it now sat there like a monument to his own apathy. He asked his assistant to look into the boy and his mother. It took 2 days. 2 long days. Her name was Elena Rivera. A single mother. She used to clean offices downtown until she fell ill. No insurance. No family. Her only support, her son Miguel, who dropped out of 3rd grade to take care of her. He worked odd jobs, shined shoes outside buildings, sometimes even went without food to save up for her medicine. The report ended with a sentence Jonathan couldn't shake: "The boy is currently in the hospital waiting area. No guardian or relative has come forward." Jonathan stood outside the emergency room that evening, dressed not in his usual suit, but in jeans and a coat. The hospital was stark and cold. Nurses moved around him, indifferent. He saw Miguel, curled on a bench, jacket over his knees, arms wrapped tight. His head was tilted against the wall, asleep but clearly drained, mentally, emotionally, physically. A nurse passed by. "He's been there for hours. Refuses to leave his mom's side unless they tell him to. Sweet kid. No one deserves this." Jonathan approached slowly. The moment his shadow touched Miguel, the boy woke with a start, alarmed. "I'm not here to hurt you," Jonathan said quietly. I came to see how your mom's doing." Miguel stood up, defensive. "I don't want anything. I didn't come for pity." "You didn't." "I came because I wanted to," Jonathan replied, guilt threading every word. Silence fell between them. Finally, Miguel exhaled and looked toward the ICU doors. "She's not waking up. They said the infection spread too much. She needs surgery. And medicine. I don't have that kind of money." "I know," Jonathan said softly. "Let me help." Miguel didn't answer, but tears welled up in his eyes. He turned away quickly, wiping his face with the sleeve of his too big shirt. "She always told me not to depend on anyone. She said, 'Miguel, shine shoes if you must. But never beg.'" He looked up at the ceiling. "She didn't want me to grow up like this. She used to be a dancer. Taught me how to spin like a top when I was little. Now look." Jonathan felt his chest tighten. For years, he had thought success meant pushing forward, ignoring weakness, crushing emotion. But this boy, this fragile, relentless boy, was stronger than any boardroom titan. He made some calls. He didn't wait for permission. The surgery was approved. The best doctors were brought in. Every expense covered. That night, as Miguel watched his mother wheeled into the operating room, Jonathan placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "No matter what happens, you're not alone." Hours passed. Morning came. The doctors emerged, exhausted but smiling. "She'll live," one of them said. "She's stable now." Miguel collapsed into Jonathan's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. And Jonathan held him, tightly, as if making up for years of closing his heart. For days, Jonathan visited. Brought food. Helped arrange schooling. Bought clothes for Miguel, fresh blankets for Elena. And he began to see a world beyond his spreadsheets and mergers. But just when it felt like the clouds had lifted, the storm returned. One evening, Jonathan arrived to find a nurse rushing out of the ICU. "She's crashing, call drive." "Hayes now." He ran in. Miguel was on his knees again beside her bed, crying her name. Machines beeped wildly. The infection had returned aggressively, and this time, she was too weak. Her breathing slowed. Her hands trembled. Jonathan stood back, helpless. Elena opened her eyes one last time. She looked at Miguel, then at Jonathan. "Promise me, he won't be alone." "I promise," Jonathan said, voice cracking. And with a final sigh, she was gone. Miguel screamed. The sound wasn't a sound at all. It was heartbreak ripped raw and thrown into the universe. Nurses moved quickly. Jonathan stepped in, shielding Miguel as the machines went silent. And just like that, the boy who shined shoes had no one left. For the next few days, Jonathan barely slept. He helped with the arrangements. Paid for everything. Stood beside Miguel at the funeral. Just the two of them, under a gray sky. No music. No crowd. Just silence. Afterward, they sat on a bench, watching the wind carry leaves across the cemetery. Miguel pulled something from his coat. A crumpled envelope. "She wrote this. Said to give it to you if anything happened." Jonathan unfolded it. Inside was a short handwritten note. "Greater than Mr. Blake. If you're reading this, then I am no longer here. Please forgive me for asking, but if there's any humanity left in you, please give my son a chance. He's smart. He's brave. All he needs is someone to believe in him. I couldn't give him the world, but maybe you can show him one worth living in. I know you don't owe us anything. But he offered to shine your shoes, not because you were rich, but because he believed hard work mattered. He believed in goodness. Please don't let this world take that from him. Elena Rivera." Jonathan wept. For the first time in decades, he truly cried. Not out of stress, or anger, but grief. Real, human grief. And love. He looked at Miguel. You'll come home with me. We'll figure this out together. No more streets. No more shoeshine boxes. Just family. Weeks passed. Miguel started school. He was given a room, new books, a mentor. He asked questions about business, about building things. Jonathan began to teach him. And in those late-night conversations, something changed in the CEO too. His board noticed. His tone softened. His company started community programs, scholarships, outreach. 1 year later, on the anniversary of Alina's passing, Jonathan stood on stage at a major press event. Next to him stood Miguel, clean shirt, hopeful eyes. We often measure success by numbers, Jonathan told the crowd. But sometimes, success looks like a boy with a shoeshine box who taught me what humanity really means. The room applauded. Sometimes, the smallest hands carry the heaviest burdens, and the strongest hearts beat in the quietest chests. Miguel asked for $10 to shine a CEO's shoes, but instead, he polished a soul. Miguel stood at the edge of the rooftop garden of the Blake Foundation headquarters, now 15 years older, taller, and stronger. His eyes scanned the city skyline as the wind swept through his neatly combed hair. He wasn't that little boy anymore, not the one who offered to shine shoes for $10, not the one who begged silently for the world to give his mother just one more day. No, now he stood as Miguel Rivera Blake, one of the youngest philanthropic CEOs in the country. But the path to this rooftop wasn't smooth. Not by any means. After his mother passed, and Jonathan took him in, life shifted dramatically. But healing, that was a slower battle. Every night, Miguel would lie awake in his new bed, surrounded by warmth and luxury, yet unable to escape the cold ache inside him. He would listen to the silence and remember the soft wheeze of his mother's breath when she sang to him. He would stare at the ceiling and wonder why the world had taken the only person who ever called him, my little light. Jonathan tried everything: tutors, therapists, trips, even music lessons. And though Miguel appreciated it all, what he truly longed for was understanding. A space where someone would see him not as a miracle kid, or a charity story, but just as a son still grieving. One rainy evening, Miguel asked Jonathan, "Do you think I'll ever stop feeling guilty for surviving?" Jonathan didn't answer immediately. He sat beside him on the floor of the library, their backs against towering bookshelves, and said softly, "I used to feel that way too. When my sister died, I was just 14. She drowned in a river I told her was safe." Miguel turned to him, eyes wide. Jonathan had never spoken of his past. "I built everything in my life trying to silence that guilt," he continued. "But it never really goes away. You just learn to live through it. And sometimes, even for it." That night was a turning point. Miguel stopped hiding his emotions. He started writing letters to his mom in a small leather journal. And each time he helped someone, each life he touched, he'd add it to a list titled, "This one's for you, Mama." By age 17, Miguel had created a mentorship program for children in shelters. At 19, he gave a TED Talk titled, "You Look Down at Me. I Look Up at You." Guess who's rising? It went viral, not because of pity, but because of power. Truth. Raw, honest experience. And at 21, tragedy returned, quietly, cruelly, and without warning. Jonathan Blake was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The man who had raised Miguel, who had transformed his world, was now confined to a hospital bed, the same kind of sterile room where Miguel had once lost his mother.